whatever, it's too late. Danish people are funny. Nobel is a Norwegian series that is set in both Norway and Afghanistan. It is primarily in Norwegian with scatterings of English, Danish and Daja, and it is one of the highest quality series that you can find on Netflix or any other platform, and that may be exactly where it goes wrong. Hi guys, my name's Lamont. Welcome to the Reykjavik Review, where I talk about European series and movies. So if you like to branch out and find good quality series that are not in English, or you like languages and European culture, then you're in the right place. To make sure you find your way back here by subscribing, let's talk about what happens when a series is a little bit too good for its own good. To be perfectly honest with you, I watched Nobel towards the beginning of this year with every intention of reviewing it, and then I didn't. But recently I used some of my allocated TV time, allocated to myself that is, to watch Chernobyl, which is not something I would review because it's in English. So I thought, well, I know, I'll finally write my review of Nobel. And then I remembered why I haven't written my review. It's because writing a review for Nobel is really hard. I decided that I actually needed to watch it again, which I normally don't have time for, but I really wanted to talk about this series and I couldn't do that without getting a better feel for it, so I did watch it again. Honestly, you watch this series, you think, this is amazing. This has got to be one of the better series out there. But somehow, when you get to the end, it's just not. Everything here is so high quality, from the music to the cinematography, the attention to detail linguistically, though I will come back to that, the wardrobe, the action sequences, everything, the titles especially. Nobel has my favorite title sequence of any show ever. I watch them every time. They feel similar to the Danish series Follow the Money, if you've seen that, but these ones are better. The 6 hours of this show are worth it just to watch the titles 8 times. This show feels like a combination of the subtlety of Nordic filmmaking, but combined with the high production values of a high-budget American movie. The sequences in Afghanistan have a very similar feel to the final hour of Zero Dark 30, so if you like that movie, you'll probably at least appreciate Nobel, even if you don't love the whole series. And so, with all that, the amazing title sequence, the dust in Afghanistan, the cinematography in which the camera is never completely still, which by the way I love. Some people seem to live in the 60s and think the cameras should always be on tripods, so even stabilized handheld camera work offends their delicate senses, but I love it. With all that quality comes the anticipation of a top-notch story and script, something like, for example, Chernobyl, because just like Chernobyl, this series deals with something more complicated than your average plot. Nobel is about trying to move towards peace in a non-peaceful region, and corruption in a country that is supposed to be honest, and exactly what constitutes corruption under different circumstances. Is there such a thing as corruption that's good because it's with an aim to peace? All of those big complex issues and how they're intertwined are actually bigger and more complex than the relatively simple matter of what caused the biggest nuclear meltdown in history. That's why Nobel is kind of similar to Chernobyl. The problem is when you take on material that is this serious and this in-depth and you make it look as good as this does, you set up an expectation of brilliance throughout. The question this series asks is so complex that it feels like the quality of their answer is not quite sufficient, because it's not a series just about soldiers and camaraderie. It's not just about Norwegian bureaucracy or Norwegian corruption or Afghani corruption or oil or heroin or charitable organizations in countries of unrest. It's not just about wives loving their husbands even when their husbands kill people without a second thought. It's not just about terrorism. It's not just about the Nobel Prize or even about nobility itself. It's about all of those things and how those issues are intertwined. And if that sounds like a lot, it's because it is. And even attempting to make a series like this is in itself commendable. That is noble. And it's not that they fail, not by a long shot. They succeed to an extent in using characters who are likable and believable, and in some cases dislikable and believable, which is even more important, to tell this small story that takes place in a grand context. They succeed with that to an extent. but they don't succeed to the same kind of level as Chernobyl. Now, is it unfair of me to use what is currently regarded as one of the best series of all time, and one that is 3 years newer than Nobel? Sure, I can admit that that is unfair, but the reason I do that is to give Nobel its due. It attempts something of a similar scale to that of Chernobyl, and after the title sequence and about 3 scenes, you feel like you're about to watch Norway's version of Chernobyl, but it just never gets there. It never has that payoff that you're looking for, which, to be fair, is probably much more realistic for a war series. These questions do not have answers which fit within a TV series. So if it's going to be properly realistic, that's going to come at the cost of a digestible story. And that's where the very best of the best movies and shows shine. They take something too big to tackle in fiction, and they tackle it anyway, and they make it digestible. Nobel chooses a different path, where it doesn't wrap everything up, because that's just not how these issues are. So if you haven't watched it yet, do so. It's a great series, but just remember, it's not going to give you the payoff that you feel like you're going to get when you judge from the beginning. So in that way, it's not outstanding. It's great, but it's not outstanding. So I'd definitely like to see more from the people who made this, but it certainly wasn't the efforts of just one person. The director, Per Olav Sørensen, was also head director and director of 5 episodes of Quicksand, which had some great moments but was mostly average. So I don't think Nobel's success was just because of him. My question for you guys is, whether you liked Nobel or not, do you think that what I'm suggesting, that is that a series can appear to be so good that it ends up being slightly disappointing, is even possible? Do you think there is even such a thing as a mismatch of quality that can detriment the overall result of a series? And it's not just that I want you to comment, it's because I'm genuinely curious about whether people agree that this is a real thing. Also, one more thing, because I forgot to write this down and I did say I'd get back to it later. The Danish thing. The reason there's Danish in there is because of possibly the most ridiculously far-fetched character there's ever been. For the Norwegian military, they have an interpreter who is Danish and speaks Danish. Sorry, the Norwegian military does not employ an interpreter who does not speak Norwegian. Think about that for a second. Freaking no one understands Danish. Danes don't even understand Danish. Danish people are funny. Guys, that's been all for this one. If you like European series and you want to know what to watch and what not to watch, then stick around. There's a playlist, there's also a subscribe button, and there are other buttons that do other things if you click them and tap them. Och så det var allt idag, och tack så mycket för att ni tittade på, och vi snackas senare.